You ever wonder how the exact same medication can have a totally different price depending on what country you're in? Well, it's complicated, but a massive piece of that puzzle is how governments get involved. Today, we're going to slice through that complexity and look at two completely different playbooks from the Americas. One that's all about strict control, and another that's about strategic negotiation. So, here's our roadmap. First, we'll get into why governments even make these rules. Then, we'll zip down to Brazil to see their hands-on approach. After that, we'll jump back to the US to break down the new Inflation Reduction Act. And finally, we'll pull it all together to see what this all means for the future. Let's dive in. Okay, so at its core, the reason governments regulate the drug industry is pretty simple. They need to protect the health and safety of their people. But, and this is a big but, while the goal is basically the same everywhere, the rule book for getting there, oh, it is anything but universal. Right. So every country has its own gatekeeper for drug safety. You've got ANVISA in Brazil, the FDA in the US. Their main job is to make sure medicines are safe and effective. Where things really start to look different, though, is the price tag. For a long time, many countries have directly controlled drug costs, while the US mostly let the market figure it out. Well, until very recently. So to really understand what direct government control looks like, let's take a look at Brazil. They've had a system for setting drug prices for years, and it's all built around one incredibly powerful group. And that group is called CMED. You can think of them as the ultimate price referee for every pharmacy in Brazil. Seriously, they don't just make recommendations. They set the absolute maximum price for a drug, from the factory to the pharmacy shelf. It's a complete top-down control system. And if you want to see just how specific this control is, look at this. This isn't a guideline, it's the law. The factory price for a new generic drug has to be at least 35% cheaper than the original brand name drug. It's a simple, powerful rule that automatically pushes costs down the second a patent runs out. All right, let's switch gears and jump back to the United States and this thing called the Inflation Reduction Act. Now, this is a whole different ballgame. It's not a market-wide price cap like we see in Brazil. Instead, it's a very targeted new power for Medicare, the government's giant health program. So here's the absolute key takeaway. For the first time in history, the U.S. government gets to sit down at the bargaining table with drug companies and actually negotiate lower prices on some of the most expensive drugs out there. This is a massive, massive change for the 65 million people on Medicare. But this isn't happening overnight. It's a slow and steady rollout. The whole thing kicked off in 2023 with just 10 drugs being picked. The new lower prices for those drugs won't even start until 2026. After that, the program gets bigger each year, adding more and more drugs to the list all the way through 2029. It's a gradual expansion of this new negotiating power. This all sounds like a big deal, right? But it brings up the most important question of all. How are they actually going to decide on these new prices? What does negotiation really mean here? Okay, so this is where we pop the hood and look at the engine. The law doesn't just say, hey, go negotiate. It actually lays out a super specific framework with clear rules and things they have to consider. And the biggest rule of all is this. There's a ceiling, a price cap. The negotiated price can't just be whatever they want. It has to start below a specific maximum price. So think of that ceiling as the starting point for talks. The price can only go down from there. And that price ceiling is based on this kind of clunky term, the non-federal average manufacturer price. Now, you know how a drug has a list price? Well, almost nobody actually pays that. The real money flow is way more complex, with all these hidden rebates and discounts between drug makers and insurers. This AMP is an attempt to get closer to the real price manufacturers get in their pocket from wholesalers. It's a much more realistic number to start a negotiation with. And here's where it gets really interesting. That price ceiling actually drops the older a drug gets. Take a look. For a newer drug, the max price is 75% of that AMP we just talked about. But once a drug has been around for over 12 years, that ceiling drops to 65%. And for really old drugs, 16 years or more, it plummets to just 40%. So the longer a drug's been on the market, the lower the starting price for negotiation. But remember, that's just the ceiling. The final price comes out of a negotiation that has to weigh all of these different factors. The government has to look at everything. Are there other treatments? What did it cost to develop this drug? Did taxpayer money help fund the research? What's the patent situation? It's a whole evaluation to land on what's supposed to be a fair price.
So we've just walked through two very, very different ways of doing things. What's the big takeaway here? How do they stack up? And what does it tell us about where drug pricing is headed?
Let's just put it side by side. On one hand, you've got Brazil's model. It's broad, it's direct, it covers the whole market. One central group sets the maximum price. On the other hand, you have the new US approach, which is much more like surgery. It's targeted, it only focuses on a handful of expensive drugs, and the new price only applies to one single program, Medicare.
And that leaves us with this huge question. As countries all over the world keep trying new ways to tackle drug costs, which way is going to work best? Is it Brazil's sweeping price caps, or is it the US's targeted negotiation? The answer isn't just about policy. It's about trying to find that perfect, delicate balance between making medicines affordable for people today while still making sure there's enough money and incentive to create the miracle cures of tomorrow. And that is the multi-billion-dollar question everyone is trying to solve.